this recording will be sent out probably sometime tomorrow, and attached with that will be a questionnaire that we just ask you take the time to fill out. It's 4 questions, should take you no more than 5 minutes to fill out, but you'll have access to the recording. So if you want to go back and listen to this again, you certainly have the capabilities of doing that. The chat feature is open today. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you do have questions, I'd probably recommend holding off until the end. And what I'll do is allow people to come off mute. And if you want to ask your question, you can. If you feel more comfortable posting them into the chat, we will be monitoring that. So feel free to utilize that. And from here, what I'm going to do is pass it off. Kelly, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, RJ. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this information session today. As RJ said, my name is Kelly Berzay. I'm an auditor for the Department of Defense, specifically for the Defense Contract Audit Agency. And I thought before I started, I would just introduce myself a little bit before we get started. But I've been with DCAA for 34 years, trying to hang up my pencil at the end of the year. But it's been a great career for me. I've been an auditor. I've been a quality auditor, a supervisor, a branch manager. I've recruited 23 years as part of my job. Most recently, I'm a data analytics technical specialist. And so I've really enjoyed that as far as my career. I've worked at major contractor locations, smaller contractor locations, got to travel a lot during this job. Most of that all on volunteer basis. Wasn't told I had to go there. I asked for it, I guess, if you say. I've seen a lot of the different areas in the states that I've been to, and I also had an opportunity to serve for 27 months overseas. 18 months of that was in Afghanistan when the war was on, and I was auditing government contractors there. And then I spent 9 months in Kuwait also, and still had an employee in Afghanistan, so I still flew in there about once a month. So anyway, I love this job as much as I did 34 years ago. So it's a pretty exciting job, and I really enjoy it. And I hope today I'll give you a little bit of information about our agency and spark your interest, and hopefully we can hook up and see if we can get you a job or an internship. So that's what we're doing now. We're hiring for full-time employment, and I don't know, we got 50 plus openings across 41 states, and we're trying to hire a couple hundred people. So we have a lot of opportunities right now. And at the end, if I get a chance, we tried to share it earlier and we couldn't get it to work, but I'll put up the current locations that are open, which change almost on a weekly basis. So anyway, this is our agenda for today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about DCAA and look about our audits that we do for DCAA, and perhaps let you know why you should work for DCAA, or why we would like you to work for us. And then we're going to talk about some opportunities for students and recent grads, and also how you would apply for positions with DCAA. And then I've got my contact information at the end. And as RJ mentioned, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So in this next slide, I'm going to pause here for a minute, but this is our, what we call Salesforce, and this is how we kind of log in who we talk to on these information sessions. So if you have your phone, if you could take a shot of that QR code, and then you just fill out, it just asks for your name, I think your email. And when you get there, there's a drop-down menu, and you'll want to go down to the bottom of it. I think the very bottom one says Western Governors Information Session. You'll click on that so that you're being recorded in this session and not the other. I think there's we got 5 or 6 different sessions going on today, so that's how it's on there. So, but I'll give you a few minutes to take a picture of that, and really appreciate it if you'd fill that information out. And I promise I won't mass email you after. So if you're interested, I'll give you my information later, and you can send me an email. So, all right, that should give you enough time to at least capture the picture, if you will. So as I mentioned in the agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about DCAA. So prior to 1965, just about every arm of the government had their own auditors. So the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, etc., they had their own. But in July of 1965, they consolidated those audit functions and they made the Defense Contract Audit Agency. And so basically we conduct audits on DoD contracts. So we audit government contractors. We provide audits and financial advisory services for the DoD and other federal entities that are responsible for the acquisition and contract administration. Okay, so we only audit government contractors. We have no internal auditors responsibility for the DoD. And so we're the preeminent audit agency, defense contractors in the government. We have about close to 4,000 employees, and we're located in about 230 different locations across the world. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go. So you see here aircraft carriers, satellites, uniforms, services, different things we do. If it's being made for the government, we're going to do the audit on it. We also look at the contractor's business systems and their financial records to ensure that the cost that they're charging the government is fair and reasonable. So when I was in Afghanistan, the audits I was doing there is you had a lot of government contractors that was providing goods and services and equipment, if you will, to the military. And so my team there, we were basically auditing them to make sure, for example, on a base, if they were providing food to the troops and they were billing the government for 9,000 meals, we wanted to make sure that there was around 3,000 troops on that base that day. If there was more or less than that, then they're either overbilling or underbilling the government. So just kind of gives you an idea of the things that we do there. Now, we basically save about $3 billion to U.S. taxpayers every year. I just went out and looked at our report. Our current report isn't out for 2023, but the one for March 2022, I think, is when it came out. So I would assume any day. But back in 2021, these are the numbers for that. We actually saved $3.7 billion U.S. taxpayers. Now, it's kind of crazy because we look at a lot more audits and we question a lot more costs than we get sustained, if you will. Sustained is what the government actually negotiated with the contractor, those savings was about 3.7. But we questioned about $5.3 billion in exceptions. We put out 2,712 reports. We also reviewed 260 billion contract cost in 2021. So those numbers, I'm assuming, are fairly consistent in 2022. So, we're always supporting the warfighter and the taxpayers, and that's what I like about the job. It's very rewarding because we've got a purpose for what we're doing. So in this next slide, talks a little bit about what we do there. We do basically government contracting, and it's a little bit different than your normal public accounting firms. Most of your public accounting firms are looking at a company's financial statements and doing an audit and an assertion and a report on those costs that they're reasonable. And we don't do that. We look at the financial statements as part of our risk assessment, maybe rely on them to see if the company's a going concern, if there's any risk or, audit leads in the notes to the financial statements. But we don't audit financial statements of the companies. We basically audit the contracts that they have between them and the government. And that next bullet is just talking about how we try to make sure the DoD gets their best dollar for what they're buying. And then, we make sure those costs are classified, segregated, and allocated, reported accurately. Now, I use an example. It's similar if you were going to build a house, you would go out and get a builder that would give you a bid on that house. That's what the government does. If they need something, they'll put out a solicitation for a government contractor to bid on that. Once that bid comes in, then our agency is giving the task to look at the dollars for that. So we'll go out and look at the labor hours, the labor rates, materials, other direct costs, indirect rates, overhead rates, those type of things, and we go and do the cost. So the example in buying a house, let's say that the builder says that it would cost you $400,000 to build that house. You would give that bid to me. I would go to the lumber yard, the plumbers, the electricians, HVAC, cement, all those people. And then I would come back to you and say, well, I ran the cost and we can build this house for $350,000. Then we would sit down with the builder and let's say we negotiated for $375,000. I just saved you $25,000. And that's kind of how the procurement system works within the government. And so hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea of some of the things that we do. But obviously we're working on things like aircraft carriers and things that cost billions of dollars. So it's a little bit interesting in the type of work that we get to do. And hopefully I'll talk to you about some of the audits that I've been on and some of the experience that I've had that makes this job, I think, very fascinating and exciting. This is just some of the audits that we do. Now, remember that I told you there's the life cycle of government contracting, basically, and that means that the government or a buying command, they need to procure something, whether it's an airplane, a tank, a missile, rocket booster, shuttle for the shuttle rocket. I used to audit them. Anything like that, they put that solicitation out, and when that bid comes in, we do what's called forward pricing audits. And so we would look at those costs that are proposed, similar to what I said about building a house, and we would go in and cost all that information out. And it could be even in the materials, we're looking at quantities, right? If you're building an aircraft carrier, you imagine how many thousands of bolts you need to put that together. We will audit that and make sure the number of bolts that they're charging the government is correct. We also look at the type of bolts. A lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes the contractor might bid a certain type of bolt. Let's say it's titanium, which maybe costs more than a steel bolt. We also, try and make sure that the government's getting what it was proposed to be, is because if one bolt costs $100 more than another, you imagine thousands of bolts, that adds up to a lot of overcharging to the government. We also do forward pricing rates. Now, obviously the contractor doesn't know what their rates are going to be in the future. So they go in and based on history and based on things in their company that might happen in the future, whether they're buying somebody else or they're being bought out or whatever, they go in and they estimate what their rates are going to be in the future. And we audit those rates to see if they seem to be reasonable. And then we also look at their systems. So basically there's three types of systems we look at. We look at their accounting system, we look at their estimating system, and we look at their material management system. And material management is basically if they have a lot of direct materials in a contract, we might look at that system. But the estimating system is we'd want to go through and make sure that system is adequate because that's what they're billing or putting their proposal into the government. And the same with their accounting system. We want to make sure that they're able to account for those costs, to record them in their books like they should, and so that they're accurate to the government. And the third one we do here is incurred cost audits. And the incurred cost audits is basically once the contract has been put into place, we go in and audit the cost to make sure what is being billed and charged to the government is accurate. So back to our example of building a house, once the contractor starts building and he puts in his first bill, we act like concrete for the foundation before we would pay him. We want to make sure that he's built the walls before he puts in an invoice for the walls. We make sure he put in the windows and the roof and all those things. And so that's what an incurred cost is once the contract's going, we look at it on an annual basis of the costs that have been incurred. And this is an audit where we true up what the rate actually is, right? The contractor guessed what their rate would be, but at the end of the year, they know what the rate is because they know what costs they incurred. So those are just a few, but we do several other type of audits, but those are just the major ones I wanted to touch on here. And again, here's some of the examples of the activities we do at DCAA. And I already talked about us examining the contractor's financial statements and incurred costs. We use those as part of our audits, but we don't actually audit them. We review the billing system and the time recorded process, and we compare the proposal pricing and costs, as I said, similar to going out and looking at that bid for a house. We'll look at market costs, price data, financial regulations. A lot of times we go out and look at the rates for a city or a town or a state or a particular area when we're doing that. The next bullet there talks about interviewing employees. This is one of my fun parts, I think, of the job is we actually get out on the floor of these companies and get to see what they're doing. We get to see them building that ship or airplane or whatever it might be, and we interview the employees to make sure what they're working on, that they're charging it correctly. A lot of our contractor locations don't only provide airplanes for the military, for example, but they might also do it commercially. So we want to make sure when we're there that the employees are working on a government contract, not a commercial contract. And I just like going there because usually when we go out to do these labor floor check, they're called, we ask for a plant tour and you get to go out and see some real interesting things. One of my favorites, I did an audit at Tinker Air Force Base, and they have a building in Oklahoma City at Tinker Air Force Base that is a mile long. The building itself is 1 mile long. And so, I mean, they took us on golf carts to get around in that building. It was really interesting. I also have a location here in Utah. If I didn't mention that, I'm stationed out of Salt Lake City, Utah, but we did an audit at a place here, and when you go visit their location, they have a track outside their building, and there's a white truck going around and around and around on that track all day long, and nobody's in it. And the reason why is that they basically make unmanned vehicles for the government, for commercial. They have tractors that can plow fields using GPS, everything. So pretty fascinating things, but they build a lot of things for the government. And so we get to go there and see how that all works. And then of course, these last couple of bullets there, we have to write up and present our working papers and our findings. So once you've concluded your audit and done the steps that you have, you'll write an audit report and report those findings that you had if you had some. And then of course, I already mentioned we observed this assembly line operations. One of my first audits I did was at ATK Thiokol back in the day, and they used to make the boosters for the shuttle rocket. And so I had a couple different occasions to be able to watch them test fire those rockets, and it'll shake the ground for miles around. It's just amazing. So that was a fun thing to be able to do. So here's just a little bit about our agency. We have basically 230 offices approximately in 41 states and also overseas. We have an office in Wiesbaden, Germany, and also an office in Israel right now. And so when I was in Kuwait, my headquarters was out of Wiesbaden, Germany, and we audit all of Europe out of that office that are there. And that's a tour that when you go over there, you can take your family, and it's usually a 3 to 5 year tour when you're there. So there's that opportunity, but you can see we have Alaska on the map here. And basically how it's broken down is we have a headquarters, which is in Fort Belfort, Virginia. You see these down here. And we have regions. We have an Eastern and a Central and a Western region. And these CADs are contract audit directives. And basically what this is, you can see we got Northern Grumman and Raytheon. We have some of our senior management that actually sit at those locations with their senior personnel for those large companies. You can see Boeing and Lockheed are the other ones that are on there. And so that's kind of how our offices are set across there. Now, as an auditor, your responsibility will depend on where you're located. So if I just use Utah, for example, we have 2 or 3 major contractors here where you would basically go to that contractor location. You're embedded right there with the contractor. They got a huge facility, and their controller and accountants and buyers and all the people you need to deal with for your audits are stationed at that location. You would go there. And a lot of those audits are huge, billions and billions of dollars. You figure the aircraft carrier we do out of San Diego, we got a big office down there, and that's a lot of money. And so the oversight's a little bit bigger on that. Then we have what's called mobile contractors. So like in Utah, we have about 60 or so small contractors throughout the state that build something for the government. It could be something as simple as the hubcap for the F-35 that they do that, but because they're building something for the government, we will go out and audit them and make sure that their records are accurate and complete. So that kind of depends on where you're at if you're in a major office. So our offices are set up to where we have a team. Basically, you have a supervisor over 5 to 6 auditors, and that team functions and does those audits. Depending on the location you're at, some of those audits you're doing independently by yourself because they're smaller, easier type audits, or you might be on a team of 5 or 6 of you that are doing a huge audit to figure out the cost for the government, whether it's incurred cost or proposal type audits that you do. So it all depends on those type of things where you're at. And then we have a branch manager that's over 3 or 4, 5 supervisors. So that's kind of makes up a branch, and those are located in various locations. So like in Utah, we have 3 branch offices. So each of those offices would have, 3 to 5 supervisors that are underneath that. So our branch could be, up to 40, 50 people that are in there. So that's just kind of how that's set up across there. And of course, in the map, you can see we have an office in Hawaii and in Alaska, as I mentioned also. But a few states we don't have anything in, but some like California and out on the East Coast, someplace we have a lot of aerospace. So there's a lot of offices in those locations. And one of the things I like is that, we always say this is beyond a desk job. I tell people a lot of times when they hear that you work for the government, they think that there's one person digging the ditch and 3 of us on the side telling them how to do it. But in DCAA, all 4 of us are in the ditch, digging the ditch. So that's what I like about it. And what's crazy is we could, be out on the assembly line talking to contractors one day, and the next day we could be in the corporate boardroom. And so it's just an exciting job. So when I went to Afghanistan, I was an empty nester, and basically I applied for Iraq, Kuwait, and Afghanistan. It was all open then for volunteers to go over there and audit for DCAA. And I was selected to go there for Kuwait. And it was, I got to go to the State Department in Washington, D.C., and I drove cars backwards at 40 miles an hour trying to get away from bad guys and learn how to do J-turns and all kinds of stuff. Shot military weapons, knew how to, they taught us how to load them and do things, put us in a Humvee, turned us upside down, and you had all your gear on, you had to unbuckle yourself and get out. So they were training us for a lot of things. So then I show up in Kuwait, and I was only there 4 hours, and they promoted me to run our agency in Afghanistan. So I started popping malaria pills, and 4 days later, I was in the middle of a war zone, and I was in high-level meetings where I knew where our soldiers were fighting. I knew how many casualties we had that day, and it was a crazy time, and I can't believe I had that opportunity. It was a sad time, and the good part of being over there too is I met so many great nationals, Afghan nationals that came on base that fed us and cleaned our offices and things like that. And I have a lot of great friends from over there. So it was just really good. Never had a chance to work with the military before, shoulder to shoulder like I did there. So what a great experience it is. And so, I've got a lot of those different experiences, but in going overseas was one of the highlights of my career, obviously. So like we say, no other career in financial world like one with DCAA. So, and here's some of the things we're looking for as far as making a great DCAA auditor. I always tell the story that I think we hire 2 types of people in our agency. We hire accountants and we hire auditors. And I think we should fire all the accountants. And I'm being a little bit facetious there because I'm an accountant too, but accounting type people a lot of times seem to be checklist people. They like a list and they like going down the list and checking it off. Whereas auditors, we have professional skepticism, and we're always looking for things that doesn't seem right. It doesn't pass the sniff test, if you will. And it's hard to be married to us, quite frankly, because I think we classify ourselves as professional fault finders. So, but anyway, we're looking for people that have strong analytical and written and verbal communication skills. We talk to contract personnel, buying commands for the government, various other, individuals and organizations. And so we really need to have great written and verbal communication skills. And then having the ability to work independently or part of a team. As I mentioned, we're all on a team, but we do telework a lot and we do have our own audits. And so it's good to have that ability. When I was in Kuwait and I only had one auditor, he was in Afghanistan all by himself. He had to be independent to be able to get the work done and do those things that were there. So, and then of course, willingness to learn the complexities of auditing, contracts with the Department of Defense. some of the audits we do are very complex and interesting. That's what I find fascinating about the job. You're not just looking at a 1040 form or a state tax form. You're looking at different kind of contracts and different type of situations. And then of course, we like people to be detail oriented and highly motivated. And as I mentioned before, complex thinkers, that's a good thing to have. And then the other thing I like about it, I mean, we're almost like investigators. We're trying to piece things together. We're looking under the hood of the business, see what makes it work. And we're looking at these contracts and making sure what they're charging the government is accurate. And so I think it's real important that we have people that can do that and analyze the evidence and the data that we get. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about why I work for DCAA, and I'm going to touch briefly on the mission that matters, extraordinary career development, our learning capabilities, and what we provide for you for that. And of course, the stability of working for the federal government. Talk a little bit about salaries, and then the various work locations. Already touched a little bit on that, but we'll go through and do that. Okay, so as I mentioned before, that's one of the things I like here, that our work has a real impact on supporting the DoD mission. When you figure, I think our budget's around $600 million, and we return to the taxpayers in 2021 $3.7 billion. So that's very gratifying that we are part of that cost savings, and through those cost savings, then we can help the military procure more items that they need to have to protect our nation of our freedom. So that's real important. And of course, we're all taxpayers, so that's nice to know that we prevented $3.7 billion from being unduly spent. And so, as I said down there below, basically we return $5 for every dollar we get in our budget. So I think most people on the line are accountants, or you do your own finances at home. If you were to give me $600 million and I gave you, $3.7 billion at the end of the year, I think you would invest with me every day and maybe twice on Sunday. So very, very rewarding for what we do. And of course, another thing we like talking about we do is we have an accredited educational institution. It's located in Atlanta, Georgia. It's called the Defense Contract Audit Institute. And basically, we have two sides to this institution. We have the technical side that really deals with auditors, and that's something that you take training for quite a bit to start with, and probably your first, 3 to 5 years with DCAA. And then we have on the other side a leadership side, which is more towards those that are in management and doing upper mobility and management type situations and jobs that they're doing. And so it's great to be able to do that. And like I said, it's accredited. So what we basically do, we usually give about 300 hours of training your first 2 years with the agency. And that's usually when you come on, we send you to DCAI. Now that COVID's been lifted, we're actually sending people there live again. We were doing it virtual, which was just crazy. But we send you down there for 2 weeks, training to start with, and you come back to your home office, work for 6 weeks, go back for 2 weeks, come home for 6 weeks, 2 weeks, you go back. And that's our basic kickstart, if you will, in your career, what we were doing. And so what I like about that too is we put you right to work. So you're not going to be coming in and doing bank reconciliations and, straighten up the office. We'll have you start helping with work. When I first started 34 years ago, they had me do material quantities. That was on a $3.1 billion proposal. I was looking at quantities of the materials that were being proposed. And so we'll train you in different areas. Maybe you look at quantities this time, you look at rates next time, you look at hours, and then by doing that, you learn all the various things of doing a particular type of audit, and then you can run that audit yourself. We also have coaches. So we have a coaching program. Anyone that comes on the agency that's new are given a coach, and that coach helps them navigate through starting with the agency and doing that. And then as they go up into leadership type things, we also have mentors and that take over and help them if you are put into a higher position. So it's really good. And my experience is most people in the office are very helpful in trying to answer questions for you. And you don't need any experience to work for us. You can come right out of college, have no accounting experience, and we'll train you as you come on the job, which is a great thing to be able to do. And then, of course, here at the end, and I think it talks about it again, we also reimburse for some of the master's degrees and some of the other certificates that we have. So, you know, if you have a bachelor's degree, you can come work for us full time and we'll reimburse the master's degree. Now, I think there's a cap on it. I actually reached out to someone this morning to try and find out what that dollar amount was. So, for example, in Utah, maybe the cap, you know, the credit per hour is, I mean, the credit, dollar per credit is lower than, let's say, Washington, D.C. or something like that. And so, you know, it would cover the entire master's degree cost. But if you're somewhere else and let's say it costs $25,000 to get your master's and the cap's 20, they would only pay $20,000. But still, it's a great thing to be able to do. And then there at the end, if you're interested in getting your CPA exam, we pay for the coaching course, we pay for the CPA sitting fees, and we pay for the licensing fees after. So that's a great benefit to be able to do it. Here are some other benefits I want to talk about briefly and get through these and get to your questions. There's a lot of stability in a federal job. I've been, like I said, here 34 years. I got furloughed, I think, 4 times during those 34 years. And 3 of those 4 times, they just back paid me and paid me as if it was vacation time. There was only 1 year that we lost, I think, 4 days. We basically went leave without pay. So it's been a very stable job and easy job to do. So I grew up on a farm, and when I come home from Afghanistan, the first time my dad said, "What are you going to do now?" And I said, "I'm going to come home and run the family farm." And he goes, "You come home for 2 weeks, you'd be glad you got that cushy government job." But it's just been a great job for me, and the stability is great. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bullet or 2 lower than this, but the generous paid time off programs. So basically we get 11 paid holidays. When you first come on, if you're between your first and third year, you get 13 days of vacation. You always get 13 days of sick leave. That's what you get throughout your whole career. I still get 13 days of sick leave this year, and you can accumulate those every year and use that towards your years with the agency. And then once you've been with us for 3 years, then you start getting 20 days of vacation. Once you've been with us for 15 years, you get 26 days of vacation a year. And so that's really good. You can also work what's called credit time. So you can earn up to 24 hours of credit and use that as time off. So when you first come on, that's nice. If you work an extra hour for a few weeks, you can save up some time to take off. So that's good. The next bullet, the flexible work schedules. This is, I think, one of the main reasons why I stayed with the Defense Contract Audit Agency. We can work 10-hour days, or we can work 9-hour days, or we can work 8-hour days. It's easy to do. I've done all of those throughout my career at one time or another, whatever was most convenient. Now I work 8-hour days. My schedule is 7 to 3:30 every day. What I do like about this schedule is that we can start work as early as 6 a.m. in the morning or as late as 9:30. So if you're not an early morning person, our core hours at work is from 9:30 to 2:30. But what I liked about it, when my children were in high school, especially my boys playing athletics, I coached high school football for 6 years because I could go to work at 6 in the morning, leave at 2:30 every day, and be on the field for 3 or 4 hours every day coaching my children. So that work-life balance is excellent. If you're in Utah, we got the greatest snow. If you're a snowboarder, you can work from 6 to 2:30 and be on the slopes by 4:30 every day. And so we don't really have a busy season, and our salaries are based on a 40-hour work week. So we don't expect you to work 41 hours without being compensated for it. So that, to me, that work-life balance is excellent. I'm a professional auctioneer, and that's probably why I talk so fast, and I hope everybody's keeping up because I have no feedback, just talking into my computer screen. But it's allowed me to do auctions and other things outside of work for those things. So it's just been a real blessing in my life. A variety of health and life insurance options, and I think at the end we have a QR code. You guys can go out to DCAA.mil and get all kinds of information, but they get good health insurance. Government pays for half of that, and when you go into retirement, they still pay for some of that. We have transit subsidies, so if you're in places like Washington, D.C., and here in Utah, we have trains and buses or whatever, and the government will subsidize and pay for those to get you to work. And we already talked about education reimbursement. We also have some college loan forgiveness, and I believe on that is I think you have to work for us for 10 years and have been paying on your student loan, not missed a payment or whatever. And then there's some forgiveness. I'm not really up on that as much, but let's get you hired first, and then we'll figure out about that stuff later. And then we have a 3-part federal retirement program. So that's basically made up of, we have a 401k, and the government matches dollar for dollar up to 5%. We also have a pension, and so you get basically 1% a year that you work with the government. It's actually 1.1% per year, and that's on your high 3 years at the end. And then, of course, Social Security is the third part of that retirement program. Salaries, we were pretty competitive. Now with COVID and some of the things that have happened, it used to be that we were pretty competitive with the Big Four. The Big Four are usually looking for master students, and until really COVID happened, we were within a couple $1,000s of the master's program. Now they're probably anywhere from 10 to 15,000 higher than what we are paying on that. But you got to remember, their salaries are not based on 40-hour work weeks. You might work 60, 70 hours. So that's something to consider too. But I think we're very competitive in what we do. And I have a slide later that'll show you an example of what that is. Now, what we're doing is if we hire, if you're familiar, I know we have a lot of military personnel that go to school at WGU. If you're familiar with the GS levels, we're basically hiring entry-level auditors as a GS7 level. And then our working levels at GS12. So basically, if you have a bachelor's degree, you come on as a GS7, and after 1 year, you'll be promoted to a GS9, and then after a year, you're promoted to an 11, and a year after that to a 12. And that's non-competition. You don't have to compete with anyone. We have employment standards. You just have to be fully successful in those. And in my 34 years, I only know a couple people that didn't meet those standards, but they were promoted basically from a 7 to a 12 to the working level. We already talked about this, the slide of our offices and Europe and the Middle East, Asia, some of those things that we do. And I know I had a friend that went to Wiesbaden with his family, and they hired a nanny, and then like they would go to Japan for a week, and he did audits, and then at night they would travel around and do things. I have another employee here that I hired several years ago, and he took his family to Israel, and so they were able to travel around and see the sites in Israel and different things when he wasn't working. So it was very interesting. And this last bullet we probably should take off because we're not going to let you volunteer. There's no conflict zone going on right now that we're doing that. But anyway, basically, wherever the DoD contractors are or suppliers, we're going to be there and going to be doing our audits. So this is just a little bit here. We have a YouTube channel, so you can go out and look at that. I don't know. I sent RJ a little 90-second clip and another one for 5 minutes, I think. But you can go out there and find out from actual employees that are working, their perspective and what it is, life of working with DCAA. Let's see. These are just, so this is kind of the nitty gritty, what you probably really want to know about here. So these are the basic requirements to be an auditor. And we probably should have a third bullet here and we'll make sure I remember it when I say it. But the education requirements are, we're looking for a bachelor's degree in accounting or auditing, obviously, or a bachelor's degree in a business administration, finance, public administration, or other type of degree, which includes 24 semester hours of accounting. And 6 of those can be business law. Now, the problem I've seen most time, all my time of recruiting, usually the finance and public administration, they just don't get enough accounting credit. So for them to, they have to take extra credits just to qualify. But accounting and auditing, just getting a degree there, it basically matches. I think something flashed up, said something about economics. Economics degree would be too, as long as you got the 24 credits of accounting. So that's the must. You have to have that. You also have to have at least a 2.95 GPA. And you can see that last bullet, you must be a U.S. citizen to work for the U.S. government. So we just had a meeting yesterday and we're talking to somebody that's a dual citizen, which I was at one time. My parents were Canadian and I'm a dual citizen, but you have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to give up that other part of your dual citizenship. The second one, there's just talk about there could be a combination of experience and education. You need at least 4 years of experience in accounting, auditing career, plus you'd still have to have those 24 credits of accounting and license as a CPA. So, or license, okay? And if you guys have specific questions on that and want me to explain it more, I can let you know that. So here's one of the entry levels. Hopefully you guys can read that because I can't really see the screen where it is. This is the GS schedule for the rest of the United States. So this is the majority of our employees have this. Now there's one right after this I'm going to show you that's Washington, D.C., and you'll see the difference. So this is right now, if we were to hire a bachelor student, basically we're paying them about $47,000. And in 52 weeks, we will pay them 57. And then 52 weeks after that, they'll be making 69, and then they'll be about 83,000 when they're just 12. Now, obviously, you can see up here that the cost of living and locality pay are different. You'll see on the next page that I have here, and these will increase over time too. So these are the 2023 amounts and will be different. So I don't know if I updated this one here. I don't think I did because this is not my slide. Yeah, this is the 2022. So these prices will be higher. This is for Washington, D.C., the area that it's in. You can see here, Washington, Baltimore. Obviously, you can see the locality is like 31%. Remember on the slide before, it's only 16. So that's what makes up the difference. A lot of times the cost of living is just higher. So you can see those same things going from a 7, 9, 11, and a 12. Now, if you're a master's student, which I know we've got people on the line that are, we will hire you at this higher rate. So you would come in at 57,000. And on some occasions, we have some people that have that are alumni and they've been working in accounting. And if they're working auditing that's similar to what we do, we might even be able to hire them on as a GS11. But that's a little bit harder to do. We know bachelors are 7s and masters are 9. So anyway, that's how that goes. We also have internships that we do. It's a little bit different than a normal internship. Most internships is just over the summer, 3 months. Ours are 640 hours, which is almost 4 months. And there's reasons why we do that, have those, but we're really trying to have people join an internship like the summer of their junior year, and then they can work part-time. Once they've done their summer, whatever it is, they can part-time finish those hours, and then we can bring them on full-time at the end when they graduate out of school. That's what we're really trying to do. So to enroll in here, you have to be in a related degree. So usually your transcripts will have to say that you're going to get an accounting degree, and you have to have a minimum of 2.5 GPA. And again, you have to be a U.S. citizen to do an internship. And I'll show you how you can apply for all those things there. So this is really as easy as it is. And if you guys got your phone, you take a shot of this or write it down, whatever. But basically, you just prepare an email and send it to me. That's my email that's on there. Kelly.e.berzay.sapillion, that stands for @mail.mil. And then you just attach your resume and your transcripts, and then you click on send. We recommend that in the body of the email, you can use that as your cover letter. You don't have to have official transcripts. They can be unofficial transcripts. We don't require them until you finish your degree. And but there should be somewhere on there that tells you what degree you're getting, what your current GPA is, so we can, determine that it's that you qualify. And once I get those, I'll go through them and I'll try and look at them, see if you qualify, and get back with you and set up an interview if that's something you want to do. So it's easy. And hopefully you guys got that information down there. And if not, RJ can provide it to you, I'm sure, after, put it in the chat that what my email is. And it might be, I thought, RJ, I thought it was a little bit, if I could get on today's, we just changed our email. It used to just be kelly.berzay@dca.mil. But now that we got Office 365, they've updated. We now have different emails. So either one of them will get them to me. Okay, so just a couple of things before we go to question answering. We're on LinkedIn and Facebook and all those type of things. And so you guys are more than welcome to connect with me over LinkedIn. And again, there's my information on that. But DCA is on Facebook and YouTube and, you know, different things. You can go out there and look at that. And I think if you scan that code, I didn't do it because I didn't do it the other day. I think that goes, yeah, that goes to dca.mil. So that is our website. If you go out there, it'll tell you about benefits and everything. So if you want to take a screenshot of that too, that'll get you out to where it's going. And then of course, just staying connected. If you go out there, a lot of times it'll let you know where upcoming recruiting events, where we're going to be. And so today I'm with Western Governors. It's been good. So anyway, that's all that I have. That's my presentation. I don't know what this QR code here is today, but I won't worry about that. So RJ, that's my presentation, and I'm ready to try and answer some questions.
Awesome. First, thanks, Kelly, for going through this fantastic information. Those that do have questions, you now are able to unmute yourself and ask any question that you might have. Or if you would like to post those questions in the chat, you can do that as well. Completely up to you, but you are now able to ask any questions that you might have. So if you do have questions, please feel free to, again, post them in the chat or take yourself off mute.
That's a great question. I'm just looking, I did just pop up for a second on mine. I think a question was asked if they have to fill out SF-171. And yes, you do. That's the background check. So just so everybody's aware of the way this does it, and I went back and put on how we, you know, you guys send me your information. If you send me your information, I'll reach out to you and set up a time that we can chat, and I can answer any other questions you have. And if you're interested and there's a you know, place that's available, location that you want to go to, we'll actually have an interview. And once we have the interview, then I will tell you at the end of the interview whether I think that you would be a fit for DCAA. So I have direct hire authority. So you don't want to go out to USA Jobs. That's a very tedious process to go through. You have to take an assessment test, etc. I've been given direct hire authority to hire anywhere in the United States and overseas, wherever we're hiring for. And so you do an interview with me, I'll tell you right after if I think you're a good fit. If you are, then what I do is I will recommend you for hire, and I will send your transcripts, your resume, and my interview notes to our HR personnel at headquarters, and they will reach out to you within the next 5 business days is what they try to do, and start the process of pre-hiring. And one of those things is getting a background check. So those on the phone that aren't familiar, I'm pretty sure that SF-171 is what we complete for our background checks. And most of us, I have a secret clearance. Most of us have secret clearances. Some of us have top secret clearances. One of the divisions I didn't talk about was field detachment, and the field detachment division in DCAA, they deal with at sometimes classified contracts.
The next question that we had was, do we have to renounce other countries' citizenship even if we are natural-born citizens of the U.S.?
Yes, you can only be a U.S. citizen to work for the U.S. government. And so, like in my case, it was a little bit different. I declared when I was 18. I was taking out a passport or something. I declared to be a U.S. citizen at the time. But that question just brought up yesterday that if you're a dual citizen, you can contact me. We can send your information up, but likely someone's going to contact you when you put in your SF-171 and say you can't be a citizen of another country other than the United States when you're working for the government. Hopefully that answers it.
The next question, so obviously here at WGU, we're a competency-based program, so our students don't have a set GPA. You know, we had talked about this previously. You know, any one of our students, if you successfully pass one of your competencies, it's automatically put in as a 3.0 for our pass. So how would this affect somebody's application?
That's a great question. I actually didn't know about this till I went to training in February, and RJ and I have had a discussion over this. Basically, the government, and I think it's the OPM, Office of Personnel Management, it's one of their policies and procedures. We will not hire somebody that has a transcript that just has pass-fail on it. So basically what this means is that's only for the bachelor's students. And I didn't know this either. If you are getting a master's degree, there is no requirement for a GPA for a master's degree. So if you're in a master's program right now, you're eligible to work for DCAA. The one exception and caveat, which I also just found out because I didn't know, if you have any transcript, if you have any transfer credits on your transcript that have a GPA associated with them, then you would qualify to work for DCAA, which I think RJ and I had talked to him about it too. We had somebody that they just had 6 transfer credits from another university before they started WGU, which had, I don't know what it was, 3.5 GPA or whatever. We were able to interview and hire that individual because they had a GPA on those transfer credits. So does that make sense, RJ? Do I need to explain more? Or?
No, that was great.
Thank you. So I guess the bottom line to that is, if you are concerned or don't know about that, contact me. I'll walk you through it and we'll discuss it and see what you need to do and go from there. And you don't have to have your degree to apply. Right? So I'm hiring people right now that are graduating in June and August. We haven't went past August yet, but I imagine here in a few weeks, we'll probably slide that to December, anyone that's getting their degree through December. So if you got a bachelor's degree and you are in the master's program and you're going to be done by August or whatever, you'd be qualified to interview right now.
Does anyone else have any questions?
If they don't, just for a second, RJ, I'll add a couple other things that I didn't talk about when we did this.
Yeah.
One of the people to know that's on this information session is we have a lot of different things we do than just being an auditor for the Department of Defense at DCAA. So I've got a little post-it note up here that I wrote things down. We can be a financial liaison auditor, which means we're embedded at a buying command for the government, and we are a liaison between the buying command and the various offices and contractors across the country. And that's usually a 5-year to 7-year tour of duty as a DCAA employee. We also have an investigative support team, which is like a 5-year, I think, a tour of duty. And basically all we do is audit fraud. So we look for contractors that are doing blatant fraud. We might testify in court for people who go to jail, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy. And we get to work with DCIS, Defense Criminal Investigative Service, and different things like that. We have, as I mentioned, I was a data analytics technical specialist before they made me a full-time recruiter right now. For this thing. So we work with Power BI and we do a lot of slicing and dicing of data, which is interesting. We have a QM group that works with statisticians and statistical sampling. You could do that for a while. We have a compensation group that just deals with compensation. We have people in policy. We have a lot of technical specialists that do various things that are subject matter experts. And at our institute, you can be an instructor. You can go there full time. It's usually a 3 to 5 stint, or you can be an adjunct professor. In 2017 through 20, I was an adjunct instructor there for the new hires, and I would go down there about 6 times a year and teach the onboarding class. So there's just a lot of opportunities to move up and move around in the different offices. So that's something I want to make sure everybody knew also.
We do have another question, and you did touch on this earlier. Can other majors like cybersecurity apply for positions?
Yes, you can, as long as you have 24 credits of accounting. And I get that a lot at our career fairs that come up. Just so everybody knows, about 89% or 90, whatever it is, of our employees are auditors. That's what we do. We audit government contractors. But we do, like I said, we have lawyers that are part of our agency. We have people like IT, for example. We use a third party, outsource that. So if something's up with my computer, I phone the help desk, and it's not a DCAA employee that helps me. It's a third party. But yeah, you can have pretty much any degree you want, but the requirements are you have to have the 24 credits of accounting, 6 can be business law, have to have a 2.95 GPA, and you have to be a U.S. citizen. Those are 3 non-negotiable. If you don't have those, you don't qualify.
All right, I don't see any other questions in the chat. I did want to thank you again, Kelly, for jumping on, presenting to the group, and we appreciate you taking the time this afternoon to do that.
Well, thanks, RJ, and I appreciate you putting it together, and I appreciate everyone that joined today. I know there was quite a list. I never got the final list, but we were talking around 150 at one time that was registered. So I appreciate you guys taking time out of your schedule. And like I said, I'll make myself available either on phone or through email. And the sooner you send them to me, the sooner we can start the process. But thanks, RJ.
Absolutely. And just a reminder for everybody, this was recorded, so that recording will be sent out tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that email. And then if attached to that, I will have Kelly's information. So if you do have any follow-up questions, you can reach out. I hope everybody has a great rest of their afternoon. Take care.
Thank you.